If you want dinner, then get on your knees and lick it off the floor. Those were the words my son-in-law threw at me after knocking my plate out of my hands in front of a room full of people. I still remember the sound of the dish shattering and the silence that followed. I stood up slowly, straightened my jacket, and said 3 quiet words that wiped the smile off his face instantly. I know everything. What happened the next day was something he never saw coming. My name is Daniel Harper, and at 68 years old, I thought I had already lived through the hardest parts of life. I lost my wife 3 years ago, and since then, my daughter Emily has been the only piece of family I have left. She married a man named Victor Lawson, a successful attorney with a polished smile and a talent for making people feel small without ever raising his voice. From the beginning, something about him never sat right with me, but for Emily's sake, I kept my distance and stayed quiet. When Emily called to invite me to a dinner celebrating Victor's promotion, I hesitated longer than I should have. My past visits to their house had always left me feeling like an outsider, like I was tolerated rather than welcomed. Still, she sounded hopeful on the phone, and I could not bring myself to say no. I put on my best shirt, grabbed a bottle of wine, and drove over, telling myself that maybe this time things would be different. The house felt as cold as ever when I walked in. Everything looked expensive and carefully arranged, but there was no warmth, no sign of the daughter I had raised. Victor greeted me with that same rehearsed smile, the kind that never reached his eyes, and led me inside where his colleagues were already gathered. Emily looked beautiful, but something in her expression felt dim, like she was exhausted from pretending everything was fine. Dinner started politely enough, but Victor quickly turned the evening into his own stage. He spoke loudly about his promotion, his long hours, his achievements, making sure everyone understood exactly how important he believed himself to be. When the attention shifted toward me, he asked about my life in that casual tone that always carried an edge. Before I could answer properly, he made a joke about my routine being nothing more than doctor visits and grocery runs. People laughed awkwardly, and I felt that familiar sting, but I stayed quiet for Emily's sake. As the night went on, I noticed how she moved around the room, smiling when expected, laughing at the right moments, but never truly present. It was the kind of performance you only give when you are trying to hold something together that is already falling apart. I wanted to ask her what was wrong, but I knew better than to create a scene. Then dessert came. She had made my favorite chocolate cake, the same one her mother used to bake. For a moment, I felt something close to comfort, but that moment did not last. Victor began telling another story, this time about difficult people, clearly aiming his words in my direction. His tone was condescending, filled with that quiet cruelty he had perfected over the years. Suddenly, his arm knocked into mine, and my plate slipped from my hands, crashing onto the floor. The room fell silent as frosting and crumbs spread across the hardwood. People rushed to apologize, but Victor stayed seated, watching me with amusement. Then he raised his glass and said those words that I will never forget, telling me to lick it off the floor if I wanted to finish my meal. No one laughed this time. Even his own friends looked uncomfortable, but Emily said nothing. That silence hurt more than anything he said. I stood up slowly, feeling every eye on me, and leaned slightly toward him. My voice was calm when I spoke. I know everything. The change in his face was immediate. The confidence drained out of him, replaced by something much closer to fear. What he did not know was that 3 weeks earlier, I had discovered the truth about him. Emily had asked me to stop by their house one afternoon while she was out of town. I arrived early and was sitting quietly when I heard the front door open. Victor walked in with a woman who was not my daughter. I stayed hidden, listening as they spoke openly about their relationship, about plans for a future that did not include Emily. They laughed together, kissed, and talked about how easy it was to keep everything hidden. That day changed everything for me. I did not confront him right away. Instead, I reached out to an old friend who worked as a private investigator. Together, we gathered proof, photos, financial records, evidence of money being spent on this woman, even documents showing they were building a business together. It was not just an affair. It was a carefully planned escape, funded partly by my daughter's own income. After the dinner incident, I knew it was time to act. The next morning, I called Emily and asked her to meet me for lunch. Sitting across from her, I told her everything. I showed her the evidence piece by piece. I watched her world fall apart right there at the table. But I also saw something else begin to form beneath the pain, a kind of clarity she had not had in months. She did not break. She listened, asked questions, and by the end of that conversation, she had already started thinking about what to do next. A few days later, she confronted Victor with everything laid out in front of him. He tried to deny it, then justify it, then blame her, but none of it worked. The truth was undeniable. She filed for divorce soon after. With the evidence we had gathered, she protected herself financially and walked away with her dignity intact. Over time, I watched her change. The exhaustion faded, the tension disappeared, and she became stronger than I had ever seen her before. She rebuilt her life on her own terms, focusing on her career, her happiness, and her future. Months later, She told me she felt something she had not felt in years. Peace. She even started dating again, this time choosing someone who treated her with respect and kindness. Seeing her smile without forcing, it reminded me that everything we went through had been worth it. As for Victor, I saw him once after the divorce. He looked smaller somehow, like a man who had lost more than he ever expected. I did not say anything to him. I did not need to. Some things do not require words. That night at the dinner table, he thought he had all the power. He thought he could humiliate me without consequences, but he underestimated me, and more importantly, he underestimated my daughter. In the end, he lost everything that mattered, while we walked away stronger. At my age, I have learned that the most powerful response to cruelty is not anger. It is patience, truth, and knowing exactly when to act. And sometimes, the best revenge is not destroying someone, but helping the people you love build a better life without them.